Welcome to Laugh, Cry, or Die, a podcast about horrible lives that are horrible and the horrible things that happen, and then just getting on with everything while holding a pie of horrible. Is that right, Naomi?
A big pile of rubbish, topped with sprinkles of niceness,
Sprinkles
and
of
then
niceness, right?
boiled in a vat of shit.
You're really pitching this podcast as a meal.
I know,
This is a
right?
podcast hosted by Naomi Strain and Steve Wilbury. We are two human trash piles of medical woe. And we like talking about stuff. We've got guests on sometimes. And this is one of our episodes that you're listening to right now. And it's supported by Tasman District Creative Communities.
Wonderful. I think let's talk about you.
Me?
Yeah, I think that you have some ridiculous, crazy things that I would like to hear about.
Okay, right. You want the whole... Now, bear in mind, I do this entire story as a 90-minute stage production.
All right, so how about we cut out all the shit? all that guff that you'll waffle on about, and let's just drill down.
No guff. We're just gonna like nut through and just like be like bang, 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 story. All right.
Yeah, we'll give it a go.
No waffling. No, there won't be any magic tricks, and that will take about a good third of the show out. So there you go.
That's good. We'll do a whole episode on your magic. We'll just do a video recording of you doing magic.
Well, that could be on the Patreon. Was just like free magic tricks.
Yes.
There you go.
Good little bit of pushing of the Patreon. I like it.
Yeah, subscribe to the Patreon. See mind-bending magic. Solved.
Done. Okay. What I want to know is, what was the very first thing that alerted you that something was going wrong, that you weren't just a normal human, that you were going to turn to shit?
I was walking down the stairs at my house when I was like 12, and I just got this really sharp stabbing pain in my stomach, and I was like, ow, that's not yeah, that's like not a thing. Don't like that. Maybe. And it went on for ages until I finally like complained to my mum, because it's a very kind of like man thing where you're like, oh, that's everyone's stomach sometimes gets stabbing pains.
Most people collapse in agony every now and then.
Yeah, it's just, it's what happens when you get old or young. So that was the first thing, was the stabbing pains. And then my mom took me to a doctor, and it turns out I had ulcerative colitis, which is the disease where your immune system attacks your large intestine.
And once you get that, is that you are going to steadily decline into death, or can you get better from it? Is that just like my experience was that I had remission periods, so I would be okay for a while, and then I would have a flare-up, is like, I guess, the technical term, and then they give you really heavy doses of steroids to like calm down the inflammation, because what happens is your immune system attacks your intestine and it just gets inflamed because the cells are dying, and that's just your body's response. So it's the inflammation that makes you really ill. So then if you can get rid of the inflammation, then you can function a bit better. And so for an amount of time they just kept giving you drugs, it just
it was and it kept working. Actually, my biggest remission period was when I was in high school and I started to smoke weed, and nice. I had like a good 2 years of like almost regular pooping, which is unheard of with ulcerative colitis. And then I went to university, and then then the medication stopped working, and I got very, very ill. And they said, if we take out your large intestine, your immune system won't have anything to attack.
Like your whole
large intestine. And including filleting your butthole. Every last bit of large intestine tissue, it gets gone. And then they put a stoma out of so you poop sideways into a bag for 6 months while that heals. And then they make a pouch out of your small intestine, like tie 2 loops together and then cut the middle out to make, it's called a J pouch. And then they reconnect your butthole. So I can still poop, but I will never know like the beauty of a really solid shit that requires no wiping ever again.
Right. So pretty much you start to digest, but it doesn't get a chance to form.
Yeah, it comes out kind of a sludge. On my
So,
Bristol
so
steel
how
charts
old were
all over
you
the place.
when you were faced with that? When they first said, "Okay, we can do the operation," was it,
I was
"We're going to do it. That's
20.
your only option," or was it, "Do you want?"
It was talked about a bit as an option of like, things are not going great. And then there was a point I was like, I think my hair started falling out, and eventually I was like, okay, I'm really sick. Like, I don't like
Mm-hmm.
feeling like this. So I was like, okay, fine, we'll do it. And by the time I actually got to the surgeon's appointment, I was totally on board. But it took me a while to come around because, it's a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. Have your guts cut out. So
Yeah.
were you at that point still managing to kind of get through normal, what we call normal life, or were you already out of action? Were you not being able to
Um,
function?
I was at university and I was working, but I was very yeah, I was getting
Lazy.
along. No, I wasn't lazy, but I was just really like willing myself through and then like being quite ill at the same time. So
Right, yeah, yeah.
I was also young, so I had more energy then, I guess. So I
Yes,
could
yeah.
keep going despite everything falling apart.
And I suppose at the start of that as well, you kind of don't realize the toll that pushing through all of that
Mm,
is going to take. Like
yeah,
now we know that if we go mental and do far too much stuff, we're going to suffer. I mean, we
yeah,
still do it anyway. But when you're sort of young and bulletproof, you
yeah.
think just fuck it, just carry on and just go
And
for
I,
it.
I was very bulletproof. I was very good at just gritting my teeth and being
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay, my stomach hurts, but I'm gonna do this thing because
yeah,
fuck my
yeah.
stomach, you know?
And so they then cut your insides out,
Yes.
and you had your 6 months, and then they gave you a new butthole. And so was it like immediate? Did it feel like, okay, now I can function like normal?
Like it was,
Or
I remember going like after I had that first operation and I recovered and I went back to school and I wasn't sick for the first time since I was 12 years old. Like I
wow.
didn't feel bad. My body wasn't trying to kill itself, and it had
Yeah, yeah.
it had steadily, the weight gets heavier as you're walking, and you don't notice it building up, but then when it's gone, like, and
Yes,
I
yeah.
went a little bit manic, I think, and actually like got some scores deducted on my university exit because I was like too like right, I'm going to conquer the whole fucking world now.
Right.
I am a god. Rah, 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 rah.
Nice.
And I went to start a master's program, which I then dropped out of. But then luckily I had dropped out of it because then my intestines twisted around the scar tissue from the first operation, and then they burst inside of me.
Oh, so your small intestine got involved in the party,
Yes,
and
my small intestine got twisted up, and I just started like puking and did not stop.
right, right. So then
Uh,
both ends were fucked.
Yeah, and they ended up having to take out 10 centimeters of small bowel as like the solution and then
Oh, okay,
stitch
okay.
stitch it back together. Um but that was another one where like I went from like being really sick and actively dying to not very quickly.
Right,
Um
right.
and yeah, is that you wake up and oh, my insides aren't leaking. I feel brilliant.
It's the small things, isn't it,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
I'm not leaking this morning. So at that point, you had some of your bowel
Mm,
and your large intestine out.
yes.
And so you lived a relatively normal
Yeah,
existence
I'm
for a
cruising
while,
along. I finish school. I start working at the juggling shop. I have a really tumultuous relationship with a
as you
girl
do.
older
That's
than
like a
me.
normal job to have. I'll just go and
Yeah,
work at the juggling shop. Most
as
people,
you
it's like,
do.
oh, go and work at Macca's or go and work at the warehouse. You went to a juggling shop. That's cool.
Well, it was my budget circus school. I was got very into juggling in university, and then just kind of this job came up, and I got that job and
Nice, nice.
loved it. And then went to European Juggling Convention, met some fantastic people, got invited up to Edinburgh to work with the circus company, and was doing great. Oh no, sorry, I missed a step. So I had a big fall from a skateboard and this will become relevant later. So just before I move up to Edinburgh,
Teaser.
I have a big fall off my skateboard, and I go to Edinburgh. We go traveling. Like, it's a good couple years of like not just like having had some trauma, but not being like ongoingly horrible.
I was going to say, you had all that crap to deal with, and then you're then living a life that's better than a lot of people would. You know, you haven't just like done the normal boring life. You've gone traveling and you're doing all these amazing things and experiencing a really active, vibrant, exciting life.
Yes, it was. Well, I mean, it's pretty cool. We did fun stuff.
It is cool. Yeah, no, it's great. It's more than a lot of people do. You know, in a lifetime.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like I survived near death and then was like, you know what, I'm really gonna buckle down on my accounting exam.
Yeah. Which would have been, you know, fine, but so much more exciting doing it your way.
would have been okay.
And so
good.
Did that then come to a crashing halt, or was it a gradual things are going wrong again?
So so the story goes that I was doing really well. We went traveling, we came back. I decided I didn't want to be a performer. I'd always, since I was a kid, wanted to be a stand-up and a performer. And then I decided, no, I wanted to do something good with my life. And I went and I became a support worker for people who just come out of the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary with pretty severely full-on mental health problems, who they weren't just keeping them locked up anymore. So they went and they put them in houses with their mates in the community. They were like these kind of little mini asylums. Like they could go out and go to the pub and stuff, but it's this weird kind of halfway vibe. But anyway,
kind of like assisted living.
Yeah, assisted living, exactly. So I was a support worker, really, really enjoyed that job. But then I noticed I was walking to work and my nails were digging into my palms, and I was like getting really stressed and aggro, and I was getting these weird twitches, and it was all, you know, not great. And then long story short, when I had that fall before I moved, my L5 vertebrae had broken, but then like healed with some like tissue. And then I started going to the gym, and then all the exercise had jiggled it loose. So then my vertebrae was pressing down on my discs, which was compressing my nerves, which was causing the pain. And I say, well, if we move it and screw it all together, then it won't be pressing on your nerves and you won't be in pain. So I'm like, okay, cool, great. And I get that done. It's like a 6-week recovery. And I go back to work, and I feel better again. It's like the pain in my legs is gone and everything's, you know, pretty much all right. And then I'm going along, living, working, and then I go over the front handlebars on my brake on my bicycle, and I break my humerus, which takes 2 screws, which wasn't very funny.
And that was just completely random. That wasn't like, you can't even say that was a pain spasm or an issue. That was just you being a dick and coming off your bike.
That was some prick nicking the front brake off my bike because it was Edinburgh, and that was what people did. And then I went to get a new front brake, and the new one was way better than my old one. And I went over the front handlebars because a taxi had pulled in front of me. It wasn't 100% my fault. Anyway, I'm going through the air thinking, don't hurt your back, don't hurt your back. So I land on my hands and knees from that, and then that just like breaks the tip of my humerus off, which needs to get nice, because by this time I'm getting kind of bored of surgery. And I say to the doctor, I'm like, what if I don't have this? What if I just let it heal? He's like, well, you'll never use your arm again. And I was like, cool.
It does get to a point with any kind of like credit thing, it does get to a point where for anybody else that would be a little operation, but because of so much you've gone through, it's like, oh, fuck it, there's no more. I'd rather just have like the pain or the complication, because one more thing, it's just it gets tedious. It's almost like it gets boring having so many procedures.
It was starting to get a bit silly. Little did I know, it gets even sillier, teaser. So they screw my elbow back together, and that again, I'm fixed, but I'm starting to get pain, like really weird pain in my abdomen. And now looking back, I think that was really the start of my central sensitization, my like the chronic pain hill you know? That's the start of my, like, after so much trauma, your nervous system just starts echoing itself and it gets upwound. It's this process where, because your nerves are transmitting so much information, because you're like, you know, I've had 4 screws in me. That's a lot louder of us. Most people don't get cut with giant knives.
Yes,
you know? So your nervous system isn't used to these huge traumatic events. And then eventually what happens is your neurotransmitters are going so much that then your neuroreceptors are like, oh, well, I should probably make more neurological receptors because there's so much going on. And then you've got more receptors. And then because you've got more receptors, that says, oh, you should make more transmitters. And it's this feedback loop.
Right.
Where,
it's kind of like an echo bouncing off itself and growing and growing and growing. Right.
Exactly. So yeah, that was the start of just stuff in my body starting to go wrong. And I actually ended up leaving my job when we moved to New Zealand a bit early because I was just struggling too much with just this pain. And I'd been in and out of hospitals, they'd done lots of tests, and eventually they were like, there's nothing that's killing you, so go home.
Right.
And I was like, cool. So I went home. And then we moved to New Zealand. And then, like, my stomach had kind of cleared up a bit, and I was getting along all right. And we moved to New Zealand, and I noticed that my legs are starting to hurt again. And even though my back was what was injured, it was my legs that hurt because it's the nerve to your legs that goes through that L5 vertebrae. And I go to the doctor, and the doctor went ooh ee ooh ah chang chang walla walla bit
walla walla bang bang.
That's throwback for the 70. I do think we probably will have a slightly older audience who are like, oh yes, my friend Jane had 7 hip replacements. She was tight.
My friend Bob, he loved the Venga Boys.
You know, one of my favorite things about, like, you know, being our generation is that when you go into a old group home, they play the music from when you grew up, which is going to be rad, old, good music. And I now understand how, like,
and because, like, with the legalization of weed and stuff, you're gonna have rest homes filled with old people, like clouds of smoke, listening to like rap and all sorts of like dark and dangerous lyrics of things. It's not going to be like classical music.
No, it's going to be some banging
It's going to be fucking awesome being in a rest home.
Yeah, man. Just can't wait. Somebody else wipes your butt. Sold.
They go and have fun with yours.
Yeah. Side note, apparently there is so much STDs in rest homes because old people just like fuck because they don't have anything to do, and Viagra exists.
Oh, really?
And but then they're old, so they're like, you know, I'm not going to use a condom. I'm 87. Yeah. Oh no, I've got the clap. And then the nurse is like, yes, you have the clap. Now we have to give you medicine for the clap. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, caught it off Edna down the hall. She's such a slut.
She's the rest home.
The rest home
mobility bike. Scooter. Everyone's had a ride.
Wednesday nights, Edna's night. See, now I'm just wanting to get that old a bit quicker now.
You just want to go be slutty in a rest home.
Yeah. High also, and slutty.
Right, because the other thing is then we won't be so weird when we're in a rest home because everyone else will have lots of shit wrong with them.
We'll actually be the cool ones because we'll have had lots of practice.
Yeah, we'll be really good at being shit, and they'll be like, "Oh no, I'm really struggling with my transition from society." And we'll be like, "Come on,
get your shit together, Bob. Come on,
finish hitting that bong. We have to go to the limbo contest.
Hit the bong, then take your pills. Let's go.
Then take your pills. Then take these pills and eat this acid."
A whole rest home full of old folks on acid.
Now that's a TV show. That's a reality.
That really is, isn't it? Yeah,
I would watch the heck out of that. Okay, so this is the plan, right? We get old, then we live stream Acid House Rest Home to like the next TikTok, and then
Acid House Rest Home is the title. Love it.
And yeah, there you go. Millionaires.
Just live stream. You can have your different cameras. So have one in Edna's room. We'll have one straight into the dance room. I think we've just got to have like a rave room.
Yeah, no, you have a dance floor, and then you have a chill out zone, and then like the fuck pit.
Yeah. It's like beanbags and mattresses, just chuck them all in there.
Yeah, just loads of like weird soft shapes and furniture.
Yeah, but it's got to be accessible for people with like, disabilities.
That's true. So that you would well, you can use one of the.
So you'd want the table for doing your lines of coke.
Good
call. I like it. And see, like when you're doing your lines of coke, that's going to have to be at wheelchair level.
So wait, you get the people on wheelchairs. They wear hats with glass mirrors on them, with coke lines on them. So then, as the people in wheelchairs are scooting around, you can just bend over and do a line off a disabled old person's
perhaps
head.
Sort of like supportive handles, like access handles to be able to stand up to do your lines. Maybe like even you can make things like nice, like your acid. You can have it like in the icing on top cupcakes, that sort of thing. Just keep that level of dignity.
Dip the sugar cubes in the liquid acid, so that when you have your tea,
perfect. Because we are looking at older, dignified folk.
Yeah, I mean, you got to treat them with. The rubber meets the road. The road doesn't meet the rubber, man.
Exactly.
You gotta massage these things into place to get a proper disabled old person orgy party that you live stream to the internet for money. Really going.
Yeah,
It
could be some little methods of looking after people in there.
It's all about person-based care.
Yes.
Right.
Otherwise, you just get them high as fuck and they won't care. So anyway, back to you.
So back to me. So I spent a long time giving pills to disabled people, which is obviously where it started. And then we moved to the UK. My leg starts hurting again, and then they do some scans and they notice. We moved to New Zealand, not the UK. Moved to New Zealand from the UK, and notice my leg starts hurting, and the scans go through and they show that the screws in my back are loose, that the first fusion had never actually worked. And I literally had 4 screws loose, which my dad thinks is hilarious.
I was trying to avoid making the obvious joke on that, but
I know it's right there. You can't not when you tell people you had screws loose.
These screws, like I'm picturing like big industrial screws. Are they little screws?
They're big. They're like probably about the length of the first 2 joints of an index finger, roughly.
Wow.
And about the same, about finger sized around. And then they actually had to take, but they have this really weird head that's on them. And it's not like a Phillips or a blade screwdriver, it's like a Rexall number 7 bone, and the screws themselves cost $4,000. So
what, really?
Yeah, like I got the bill afterwards.
Right.
And I didn't have to pay it because I live in a proper country, but I saw like the itemized thing. And so I had the screws, and they replaced them with bigger screws and then put spacers in between my spine so it would stop pressing on it. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'm running a cafe, and then I'm still doing like little bits of like sleepover support work, kind of just on the side. And then even though I've had I skipped one. I totally skipped one. Oh my God, I'm terrible. So rewind, back in Edinburgh, still, I just broken my arm, but I'd healed. And I have this thing called a doner kebab pizza, which is, if you're in America, a gyro or a gyro, or like what, just like that elephant leg of brownish meat. And then you shave bits of it off, and then you put it on a greasy ass pizza, and then you eat it. And then if you're me, the flood of saturated fats means that your gallbladder kickstarts like crazy to digest the fat, and it dislodges one of the gallstones that's in your gallbladder from having ulcerative colitis, and it sticks in the neck of your gallbladder, and then it cuts off the blood supply to your gallbladder, and then you get gangrene.
Gangrene of the insides.
Gangrene of the insides. So I went to the
That's
hospital.
his medical term, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's gangrenous majoris insidious. Almond smellus lycus almondius.
I was gonna say gangrene stinks. So would you like burp and it be
No, it was still because it was still just inside. So I went to the hospital because I was having these stabbing abdominal pains that are like the something's wrong level of pain, not just the normal pain that I've been really learning to put up with. And the first time they did some tests and they did a scan and it was pretty normal because obviously it like just happened. And so they send me home for 4 or 5 days. And then I come back in and I'm like, no, this really fucking hurts. And they did another scan and they're like, oh, no, it's dead. It's necrotic. We need to take it out 10 minutes ago.
So your gallbladder?
Yeah, my gallbladder. So they take the gallbladder out and then stitch me up. And then it was after that I really started struggling with the abdominal pain. And they didn't know if it was like something with my liver or this or that. So yeah, that was that bit. So we're going to fast forward again back to where I was before. Where we're in New Zealand and I've healed from my legs and I'm getting a bit better, but I've got quite a lot of pain just going on in my life. Like it's just there all the time. But then I get really strict. I start going to the gym. I'm like, my health gets pretty good. But then I keep having this thing where I'll push myself too hard in a job and I'll burn out and just get really just messed up and in lots of pain and not able to function. And then eventually my wife says, you're not working a job again. Like this cycle where you push yourself too hard, you burn out. It's just, no.
And that's actually really hard. Like when other people can recognize what's going on and you kind of don't, you don't recognize it yourself. Also, you don't want to recognize. You still want to be that sort of superhero, and I can get through anything. And when somebody else says you shouldn't, or you can't, or it's not advisable, you kind of don't want to listen.
I spent a long time not listening to my body, very purposefully doing what I thought I should be doing. Or like proceeding with my plans to be creative and like really sharpening my will against my physicality. And learning to undo that and accept where I am and what's gone on.
It's a really good, in itself, it's a really good skill is to kind of learn to live around the shit. But it's also pretty damaging because you kind of don't learn how to live with it.
It's like the thing that they do after I went to my big pain course, which is a little bit further for pain camp. I'll finish the stories and then we'll get to pain camp. So can't really work anymore. I decide to work as a magician because this is the quickest way to make the most money in the smallest amount of time. So juggling,
you can make insides disappear. So why not do real magic?
And it touched on a lot of the stuff. I'd done a lot of like improv for a while, and all the theatrical stuff that I'd still kind of kept my toes in doing, walkabout characters and stilts and fire performing and this and that. And I was like, right, I'll do magic because magic is the best paid of all the weird disciplines, and it is. Because there's a lot of books written by very weird magicians about how to make the most money while being a magician. They're very clever about like if you're a juggler or a fire spinner, that's the lifestyle. Whereas a lot of magicians, that's the job. And then weird ones think it's the lifestyle and still think that you can use card tricks to meet chicks. But we don't talk to those people very much because it's difficult and disturbing. So I'm working as a magician and I say to myself, okay, I am going to have a trick that's good enough to close a show as the opener for my show. This is my logic, right? So I got a bowling ball and 2 pins from a bowling alley, and I would juggle a bowling ball and 2 pins as my opener for my show.
Right.
But I trained this a lot because I thought you had to like really build up the strength to be able to do it. But it turns out that juggling like that is incredibly damaging to your spine. So it's best to just like learn how to do it and then only do it when you absolutely have to.
Right.
Instead of like rinsing like 50 throws a day and being like, okay, because I've built up these muscles and I need to have them. But
Yeah.
So I caught a bowling ball and then it popped 2 discs in my neck at the Dunedin Fringe where I was performing my show.
In front, were you doing it? And did it like fuck out when you're in front of a crowd?
Do you want the truth or the fun lie that I tell people?
Fun lie first, please.
Fun lie is it was in the stage in front of 120 people.
Well, that sounds awful.
Yeah, and I
truth like, now, please.
Truth is, it was at the like empty bus I was staying at, and
right, okay. Yeah. No, I like the first one. Yeah, let's stick with the
first
lie.
one. The first one's way better. First one's way better.
Yeah.
So I caught this bowling ball in front of 120 people and popped the discs in my neck, and I went, and I had been going through the local pain camp at the time, and I had a really good physiotherapist, and before I had this accident, I was in probably the best shape that I'd been for a very long time. I was much more capable. I could do stuff. But then this injury, and I had to wait 6 weeks to get it done. And it felt like there was a rubber band around the first index joint of my finger, just like because the pressure from the discs on the nerves was so intense that it felt like something on my finger was getting pressed.
So that would have affected like your dexterity for like sleight of hand.
Yeah, for real. Exactly. I was terrified I wasn't going to be able to like juggle cards or whatever. Like my first 3 fingers were fully numb. But luckily, when they did the operation, of which the ACC only paid half, because New Zealand is weird, international listeners, we have this thing called the Accident Compensation Commission. So if you have a slip and fall in a restaurant, you can't, or a restaurant or a supermarket, you can't sue the supermarket, but ACC will make sure that you're taken care of and, you know, still get paid and stuff. But they decided that only one of my protruding discs was the result of this catch, for who the fuck knows how.
So
yeah, even though I'm taken care of and I've gotten through so many operations without feeling medical bill sting, they were like, you can't have your neck done until you get fined $7,000. And I had to do the whole GoFundMe
half of it, but having that surgery, you would have to have them both done. You couldn't just go into surgery and go, can you just do one?
You wouldn't just
There's
leave
no
it.
point in
yeah. Because they're like, oh, well, one of you can have protruding discs that don't give you symptoms. And it's like, you're not, why would you go in? You're already there. So anyway, they just kind of decided, and it worked out. I got some money from my parents and I ran a GoFundMe, and luckily I am white and privileged, so I was fine. But it's still, that was scary, especially the idea of not being able to use my fingers was very scary.
Yeah. Well, was this the surgery that you had where you stayed at the Myton Road hospital?
It was at the private hospital.
Yeah, because I remember from that one coming in to visit you, and you were doing the balls, the acrylic balls.
Oh, the acrylics, yeah.
And you were trying to get your dexterity back. And you were doing okay with that. But what I remember most was that they gave you a little jar that had some of your, is it your spine fluid?
You can, because in New Zealand, you're allowed to keep your body parts after surgery because of Maori beliefs and how important keeping stuff like that is. And they didn't let me keep my gallbladder or my large intestine. And so when on the form, they were like, do you want to keep your guts? I was like, fuck yes. So I had a jar that had the discs from in between my neck that was just there.
Because
they were just little red gobbets.
I asked you if you'd smelled them.
No.
And you said no. And I asked if I could, and you said yes. And it was a very schoolyard thing to do, like, I'm going to smell your gunk. And so I did, and it smelled a little bit like dusty old beef. And it wasn't overpowering, it was quite distinct. And I thought, oh, that wasn't very nice, and put it away. But I don't know if I told you, for the next 2 days, I could still smell it. And I was at the point of wanting to heave quite a lot. When any other smell was in my house, like if I made toast and it was a mild smell, that was still in my face. I couldn't stop smelling it. And even remembering it now makes me feel quite nauseous, even though it wasn't a really overwhelming smell. But I think there's possibly something, I don't know, in a primitive human way that my brain's going, shouldn't smell that. Shouldn't be able to smell that
you
stuff.
should not be able to smell the inside of people.
No, you shouldn't be able to smell the inside, especially of somebody else, not just your own self.
If you smell like rotting human flesh, there's danger. You need to GTFO.
Yeah,
that's like primate level shit.
Like I've been my neighbor when he died. He, when they say there's that sort of scent of death, and like when I was going to visit him, and I could smell, and it was weird because it wasn't a bad smell. It was kind of quite floral, but you could smell the, I don't know, almost like the decomposition going on already before he actually died. He was very elderly, was very, definitely his time. And that was a disturbing smell, but not disgusting. Your insides, that's gross. I never want to smell your insides ever again.
That is just straight up nasty.
I know.
Oh, hell no.
I think just as a public health, public advice, as this podcast is very educational.
Right.
If you go into somebody in a hospital and they have a jar of some of their insides, don't smell it. Don't do it. It's not fun. It seems like a fun idea at the time, being like, hey, let's be edgy and smell this little jar of gunk. It's kind of not worth it. So
Naomi Edgelord Stain.
If I've ever got gunk in a jar that you want to smell, go for it.
Okay, I feel like I need to smell your gunk jar, because
Are you flirting again?
Can I smell your gunk jar, lady?
I've told you, Steve. Stop it.
I like the way your goop smells.
See, now I want to throw up all again. But
hooray! That's
no, you're welcome to. If I'm unconscious and you come into my hospital room, knock yourself out. Go for it.
I might just.
Well, what you like.
So I have this operation, and luckily the pain in my fingers goes for the most part. And it's like cool, healed. But this is the operation that really kind of broke the back of my nervous system, and where that upwind really just got crazy out of hand. And they put me, so I ended up getting referred to this thing called the Choices Camp in Christchurch, which stands for Choosing Hope of Chaining Information and Changing with Effective Strategies, which is the lamest thing anyone has ever said in their life.
They've really forced it to get that acronym, haven't they?
They really just elbowed that one in. And I was like, okay, because I waited. So I have this really bad pain, and I go through a bunch of doctors, and one of them says, like, right, the last thing you could try is this thing called a spinal cord stimulator, where they put what amounts to a TENS machine or a 9-volt battery into your spine, and then this stimulates your nervous system, but it makes it so loud that the pain signals don't stand out against your nervous system, right? And I was told by a few people that like this was the last call. This was like the magic button that would fix it. So I fly to Christchurch. I get assessed. It's like a 4-hour thing to see if I'm eligible to get the magic button that will make my pain go away. And even though when they talked about it, they're like, it won't remove your pain entirely. You'll still have, discomfort and this and that. But, in your brain, you're like, surgery make problem go away, especially after so many times. And they sent me a letter and said, no, your stuff's not right. You can go to this lame acronym. And that was a tough 10 minutes of thinking, right, this is my life now, is this pain. But eventually I was like, well, I don't know what they're going to tell me, I don't know what I don't know. I know a lot. I know a lot about like the biochemistry of it all. I'd read all kinds of everything. You know, I've been through the ringer. And I went, and it was a 3-week residential course, where from 9 until 4 you had education about what pain is and how pain works, and then relaxation classes, physiotherapy classes, psychotherapy classes, more relaxation, physical therapy, aquatherapy, like everything.
And this is in New Zealand, right?
This is in Christchurch. So there's one in
Sounds
Christchurch.
sounds very American.
It's not,
if you know what I mean.
You cannot get this type of program in America because it brings together a lot of different disciplines. And in the American healthcare system, it's all very separate. You know, there will be a nerve person, whereas we got visited by a psychologist, and then one type of doctor, and then a different type of doctor, and then a physiotherapist, and then
it sounds amazing.
It really is. And the thing that they hammer in is like, we wouldn't be doing this if it didn't work, because they are funded publicly. So there's a lot of filling out of questionnaires that you do, like before and after, like how you are and what's going on. And they have to prove that the techniques that they use reduce pain for a majority of their patients.
Right. Yeah.
And when you consider most like quote unquote pain medications for chronic pain, which is this own thing, only have like a 30% hit rate. You know, if your toaster only worked 30% of the time, you wouldn't have one. Whereas this has a majority of people get helped. And it's all about, you know, saying I had that pattern where I would work at a job and push myself too hard and then fall over. And what you have to do is become very rigid in your routines. And so let's say I'm doing the dishes for 40 minutes. That makes my legs start to hurt. So I'll do 80% of where my legs start to hurt. So and then I'll take a break or use a coping strategy or do something else that's not the thing that causes my leg to hurt, but I'll still do, and then I'll come back to it and finish the job or something.
Right.
And the thing with that is that it's great in theory, but then you have to have a life as well. And also you have to, you know, make money to eat and do this and that. And they said that if you follow the program pretty much bang on, that you will have, it takes a year to reprogram your nervous system. And after 2 years, I was in a fantastic place. This was kind of before Christmas 2022. So this is relatively recently. And I was really like, did not have pain flares at all, ever.
Right. And so that's like through managing your sort of time, how you allocate it, and being really aware of your own body.
And reprogram, like your nervous system learns through repetition. So if you, and which I know from learning to juggle or magic or all this stuff. And so then I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'm cured. And then I stopped using my coping strategies, and I died. I have been really bad recently, and then have just starting to come right again, where I'm a bit more balanced. But so I had all those surgeries, and then it took a 3-week course and 2 years of rigid self-discipline to turn myself to mostly functioning. Like I can do stuff like this podcast.
And so like having to keep those sort of strategies going all the time and not feeling like you're cured. Do you still have pain that you need to medicate?
Yeah. So I still take dihydrocodeine, venlafaxine, and like other stuff. So you can't take morphine forever because it's really bad for your body, but you can have 120 milligrams of dihydrocodeine, and that's not bad for your body. And the doctors were like, you can have this much heroin, just a touch to keep
I was
going to
say, it's in the same family of drugs, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it gets broken down into morphine, which is heroin, really. As my Indian doctor said to me, I'm going to give you some heroin now. Really, it's diamorphine. We call it diamorphine, but really it's heroin. And I was like, cool. And man, I used to not be into downers, but whew,
And
Straight
I
IV
assume
morphine.
that's pretty addictive, I
A little bit.
imagine.
It's I like to call it Moorish.
Moorish, yeah, that's fair enough. And I mean, if it's if it's dealing with your pain and it's controlled,
You know,
then
hey, why not? It's when you start to go up that it's not.
Yeah.
So, I forgot. There is a bonus story that didn't result in surgery, but did result in me almost dying.
Oh, cool. Go for that.
So I was staying with my in-laws in Edinburgh, and like they really didn't understand why I couldn't work and did not think great of me and the decisions that I'd made. And then I caught gastroenteritis, super, super bad, like super bad. I could not keep water down. I was just going the business.
And I guess with your insides having parts removed and your gallbladder's gone at that point.
Yeah, gallbladder's already gone, and my large intestine's gone, which is like, you know, your large intestine's where you recover the water. So I'm always running a bit dry anyway.
Right. Imagine with gastroenteritis is having your intestine gone, your bowel gone, your gallbladder gone. That's gonna mess you up big time, isn't it?
So I got so dehydrated that I had kidney failure.
Come on, Steve. You're just having all the things.
And like there was a point that my wife was like, you probably need to go to the hospital. And I was like, no, I'm not going to the hospital. I'm, you know, done so much. No, I'm fine. I'll just and then I like couldn't walk down the hallway, and I was like, maybe you should call an ambulance, sweetie. So this ambulance comes, and I'm like, I am messed up. And they're like, you look like Tom Hanks out of Philadelphia. So yeah, let's take you to the hospital, buddy.
Right. Yeah.
And they take me in, and the doctor I see is like, right, so you're dehydrated, huh? And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, well, we'll run some blood tests and, you know, see what's up. And I'm like, oh, well, can I get something for the pain as well while you're gone? And I just see this look in his eyes, and he's like,
drug seeker,
whatever. And then he's like, well, we'll give you some fluids and then you can get out of here. And I'm like, well, can I have some to take home? Because I'm like super dehydrated. And he's like, oh, we'll see. He goes away. 5 minutes later, he comes literally running back into my room, puts another needle into my other arm, and then holds the IV fluids, like rigs them from the ceiling so they fall faster. And he turns to me and he goes, you're really dehydrated. I'm like, yeah, I know. I told you.
No shit.
And he's like, yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff in here. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then I'm like, I'm cold because there's liters of cold water flushing into my veins. And I'm like, this is really cold. And he's like, you're going to have to be cold now. And then I got like 14 liters of fluids over the next like 12 hours or whatever. And talk about a boomerang. Like, if you have never been fully, and you will have been because you've been in hospital, like, you know, when you've had fluids and you're like fully hydrated, your skin is like glowing.
You're like, yeah, you're plump and bouncy.
Yeah, like it felt like my eyeballs were floating. Like the dryness that was always there was just, I was like, everything was lubricated. My tongue, I could spit tongue twisters like nobody's business.
Yeah. It is a really good feeling being that hydrated. It's like how much of like normal life is just improved by having a drink of water.
Oh my God. Like,
it's amazing how different it feels.
I think it's profoundly unfair that we can't just like when we go to bed, give ourselves some fluids.
Just hook up to a drip. Yeah.
Just hook up to a drip, maybe of a young person's blood, but hey, you know, only for billionaire.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, just like be able to be like, I would like more water inside my veins without
having the hassle of going to a tap.
In my mouth, straight into me. Like a peasant.
It's not medieval times.
Good Lord. I thought we were in the future, but no, apparently 2023 is garbage town. Stupid year. So yeah, that's basically my deal.
And so as of today, you have your amounts of pain medication.
Yeah.
Your coping strategies.
Yes.
No current surgeries or no recent surgeries. Do you feel normal?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No.
No, I mean, today I had too much greasy pizza last night, and today the bacteria balance inside my fake intestine is all out of whack, and I have been in vicious pain from that all day.
Right, right.
You know, I still have to say no to things. And, you know, if I'm out or something and I'll look at my watch and I'm like, I've been here for 45 minutes, I need to leave.
Right, yeah, yeah.
You know, and then sometimes that'll impact on my wife and my kid, and that's what's really hard. Is like, you know, Rachel wanted to go out to Waitangi Day for at the food festival that we have here in Nelson, and I was like, I'm not going to be able to do that. It's too loud, it's too hot, it's too many people. I won't have enough space to be able to manage myself, so you just go and have fun. And like,
yeah, yeah. And that's so frustrating when it impacts yourself. It's shit.
Yeah.
But when you feel other people feeling the impact, and not only do you feel guilty for them, but it makes you feel shit about who you are as a person, that you're having that impact on other people. Yeah.
And that, you know, not being able to, like, a big part of my journey has been letting go of being a functional male and providing for my family, and like, you know, really doing the thing. Like, what I wanted so long was just stability and money coming in regularly, and like, you know, I wanted that normality, and I fought for it so hard and tried and failed and tried and failed and tried and failed until eventually I was like, okay, I just need to not do this. It's like war games, you know, the only way to win is not to play. I'm never going to be able to really afford a house, so we moved my family into a house bus. Which, you know, also has been really great for my pain and stuff, because it takes me 20 minutes to clean, and I'm not trying to manage a whole property or something on top of managing myself.
I think what's difficult as well is, like, I know that, you know, quality and everything is really important, and, you know, your judgments are to yourself. But I think as people who suffer with chronic things or life-changing things, is impactful to everyone, and we don't achieve the things that we hope to achieve. But as a guy, I think you have that expectation of yourself. I don't think anyone else is expecting it of you, but for yourself, you want to be the provider, you want to be strong, you want to be.
Do you have any idea how hard it is to be a white male in 2023? It is exhausting.
I'm sure it is, but yeah, there are bonuses with being, you know, like who you are in this day and age.
Yeah. I know. I was just teasing, but yeah, it has that, especially growing up as an American, that idea that like your worth is tied to your functioning in the economy, and that you know, because in America everyone's just a temporarily misplaced millionaire, and if I work hard enough, then I'll get some great results, and I too will be Elon Musk and able to buy tech companies, you know.
And if you don't, it's your own failing.
Yeah, it's because it's the only reason you failed is because you're not working hard enough. Which is a great message to tell to people who have been, you know, disenfranchised for generations and stuff. But I think in cases like this, it is such a toxic thing you have to really kind of pull out. Like, one of my favorite quotes about chronic pain was a woman who said it took getting really sick to allow me to appreciate the softness of my dog's fur. You know, the time to just sit down and live, you know, be alive. Because a lot of times I would really just rather not. If there was an option that could not, you know, damage my entire family. It's so
tiring to not be, and not just physically tiring, it's mentally tiring, and it's also it's really boring and tedious to be ill all the time.
And this is, I think,
it's not just the pain or the trauma that you want to break from, it's just getting away from that tedium.
Well, that, and as well, I feel like with people who are close to you, it's such, you have the same boring story all the time. That's like, I'm, you know, oh, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm really ill today. I was really ill Thursday. I had about 3 days where I wasn't complete garbage. I got some stuff done, so that was good. But today I'm shit. Tomorrow I'll probably vomit a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's horrible. And one of the things my wife says is like, people want to help that thing. Like, people want to help you as a person, and you're like, people in general have a good desire towards you to be supportive. But we're, as sick people, so caught up in not wanting to be a burden
Yes,
to,
yeah.
it fucking kills a room.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you walk in and go like, hey, I've been conscious for 4 days. And it's like, right, we kind of don't know. Do you know, this actually, I do want to do one of our podcasts. I do want to do one about how hard it is for other people, because we often talk about like our own internal struggles and how we cope with what's going on. But fuck, we don't make it easy for people, do we?
No. No, because we're very angry about the fact that this is happening.
Yeah, we're high maintenance. It's all about us.
I like, and it is an easy thing to kind of use as a bit of a shield against other people.